Mm, I would like to introduce Nitya N. She is a senior consultant at ThoughtWorks, and Nandagopal Elmaran, also a senior consultant at ThoughtWorks, who are going to present about infrastructures and pipelines as code. Yeah. Over to you, folks.
Thanks, Monica.
Yeah.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Shruti. So I'll just share my screen and start. Let me know if you can see my screen. Yes. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yes, Nanda. I think your
So
voice is little low.
voice is little noisy. Just give me a
Yeah.
second. Okay. It should be okay. Is it
Yeah,
better
yeah,
now?
yeah, it is fine.
So, good evening to everyone who has joined us like at around 7 in the evening on a Thursday. So, I can understand how exhausted people can be. So, thank you all for joining. So, today we are going to be, Nitya and I are going to be talking about infrastructures and pipeline as code. So, let's just dive right into it since we are running a bit late on time already. So, why infra as code? So before we even get into the like details of what is infrastructure as code and what is pipelines as code, I'll just start with a simple scenario for you to imagine so that you can visualize it better. Uh, let's assume that you're a happy developer and have an application that is ready and you are ready to take it to production. So you just have your application at hand and you don't know how to get your infrastructure up and running yet. So the first thing you'll start thinking, okay, where I can go to get my infrastructure started. Like just for example, the first thing that comes to your head is AWS, let's say. And after looking through, I mean, the console, you'll get to know that it looks something like this. I think it's even outdated and like the updated one would have more options and a bunch of pages of things that you can choose from in terms of your infrastructure components. And after looking through the documentation and then like spending some time over there, you'll actually get your server up and running. Then you slowly start realizing that you need more things to actually have your application in production more than a server. So then you realize that you actually need high availability. So you start putting a bunch of servers across multiple availability zones so that you have availability, and then you realize that you need a load balancer so that your users can access your application, and you need to store your files. So you think of your S3 storage for file storage, and I mean, of course, we can't forget the VPC subnets, NAT gateways, and etc. for networking. So you start putting those things around, and then comes the security as well. So you start adding your certificates, your encryptions, and everything to your infrastructure. And at some point, you will realize that not just these infrastructure components, but you'll also need the help of a bunch of tools to actually support your infrastructure and your application when it's running in production. So you just start sprinkling a bunch of tools. And finally, at some point, your infra will look something like this. So you have your infra, multiple environments, and a lot of things floating around along with that to actually keep supporting your application. So now just to take a step back and remember, if you all remember the happy developer that we just talked about in the beginning of this slides, will start to look something like this. So, and you will also realize that this whole like bunch of architecture that you just saw has a workflow something like this, and you have to debug and maintain this, fix issues, enhance this for a lifetime. Then a better representation of that particular developer's like mindset would be this. So I think at this point you would already be able to visualize what we would run into when we actually try to manually uh, run and maintain our infrastructure. So you'd start thinking at this point, if only I had a better way to do this whole thing. So don't worry, you are in the right place. The answer to this whole issue is infrastructure as code. So our tagline that we want to promote and create awareness on is choose life and choose infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code. So we'll dive a little deep into these concepts and look at a bunch of live demos. I'll hand over to Nitya for the presentation of infrastructure as code. Over to
Sure.
Nitya.
Thank you, Nanda. Yeah, let me quickly share this screen. So like Nanda mentioned, right? So like there are different use cases that we have, to like say why we really need infrastructure as code, right? I mean, it again, it is not just about. I mean, when you start with, right, like Nanda mentioned, you will start with one service, few things, but as we go, when number of things increases, at one point of time, you might not even know how to recreate everything, right? Like it is more about you'll start with something and then you'll nurture it, and like there is a common concept in DevOps called pet versus cattle, right? So you'll start treating your server like a pet, like something so close to you that you are so scared to let go of it, right? Like you do something manually. So instead, if you have something, right, something where I can recreate, maintain, and manage, then that is what we really mean by this, right? Like if I can find a way to manage it. So what exactly is infrastructure as code is if I can maintain your entire IT infrastructure as configuration files. So that is all it is, right? So again, this can be achieved by different tools and technologies. So there is Terraform, there is Pulumi, there is AWS CloudFormation, and apart from that, there are specific configuration tools like Chef, Puppet, Ansible. There are a lot of things, right? Like this area is very rich. So for our example, our demo, we are going to consider Terraform. So the idea is how I'll be able to create a simple Kubernetes cluster, right? Using Terraform in a DigitalOcean cloud. So that is our problem statement. So in the interest of time, this is the cluster that would be created, right? I have recorded it again because the cluster creation takes some time. So it has a couple of nodes under one Kubernetes cluster. So let me quickly show you the code, right? I mean, a very high level. I mean, we don't have to get into details of how a Terraform module would look like and everything, but high level, right? Like all I'm saying is something like this, right? I'll have to give a token, for it to create a cluster. So I'll give a name of the cluster, version, where I'm installing, how many Kubernetes clusters are getting installed, and things like that. So, and then if I take one step deeper, how it is getting created, right? So again, in Terraform, like there are resources modules. In the interest of time, let's not get into details. But the idea is this: some way, right? This is some way of representing a Kubernetes cluster resource in a DigitalOcean, right? So all I'm saying out is, hey, this is a representation of a cluster in DigitalOcean, right? So now when it runs, it will, create a cluster. So let me show you, like the what happened in the background. So if you look here, right, like there is no cluster here. So there are a bunch of Terraform scripts, right? And then I try to apply in the sense I try to create, the infrastructure. So it starts here. It tries to show you what all it creates, right? Just let it print. Yeah, so if you see here, it creates a bunch of nodes, a bunch of different things, whatever components are needed, and then it'll ask for a confirmation. So once I approve, it gets created, and I'll skip all these parts because it is the part where the cluster is getting created. So and then finally, I mean, I had no cluster, and after I run the scripts, I got my cluster back. So very simple screen recording, right? Um, yeah, I think that is mostly what we wanted to say, right? Like you just have to have a bunch of files, right? So since we are using Terraforms, it's all a TF file. If you are using something else like a Pulumi, you can write code in C# or Node or whichever language you want. Similarly, Ansible is Python, and I mean you have things like that. So yeah, this is mostly what I wanted to show when we want to represent infrastructure as code. Anything you want to add, Nanda?
Nothing major, right? I mean, one might. I mean, when you look at it, it looks like Terraform is doing something. If you're looking at it for the first time, of course, it looks like it's actually doing something magic, and it actually brings up your cluster that you would actually take some time to create if you create it manually, right? At the end of the day, Terraform, all it does is takes your API token for whichever provider that you're using and making a bunch of API calls using that particular provider's API in the background with this particular configuration of all the components that you have described over there. So it's a very simple thing that Terraform is orchestrating for us, which makes our life very easy because you have a single source of truth for your entire cluster, which you can look back to, and you can just keep adding to it, and then like you can recreate it, recreate anything, and you can play around with it very easily than you actually going ahead and maintaining your own. So that's pretty much what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, just one more, like adding again. I mean, here we are using Terraform. I mean, just to call out here, like Terraform, right, as a tool, it also maintains the state of your infrastructure. So you'll have by end of the day a JSON file, which will represent your entire infrastructure. When I mean entire infrastructure, like what nodes are getting created, whether it is a cluster, what networks are created, what VPCs are created. So everything by end of the day, if you see, it is just what the current state of the entire cluster or your setup would be a file, right? So like again, the different tools do it in a different way, but if you look at it, right, it's very simple. You can easily see it, you can create it, destroy it. So it becomes very simple when things are in a code. So now I can destroy and recreate, and it's going to be very simple. So yeah, this is about infrastructure. So the next thing that we wanted to cover, right, I'm sorry, this is a recording. So the next thing we wanted to cover. So we spoke about having.
Nitya, like we have a question here.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Shakti here. We have a question here. Do you like to answer it now, or you are taking questions at the last?
Yeah, we can.
It's more.
We can quickly answer. I think it's a simple question. So there is a question asking Terraform versus CloudFormation.
Yep.
So again, I mean, yeah, CloudFormation, it is from AWS basically. Terraform is cloud agnostic. But by end of the day, they have like the idea is same, but the way they do is going to be difficult. But I don't know if there's something specific the person was looking for, but.
Yeah, I mean that's more about it. AWS CloudFormation is like specific to AWS as such, and Terraform is cross-cloud this thing. But if there is anything specific
in terms of performance, they're asking. In terms of performance or cost?
Okay, in terms of performance or
cost.
I haven't personally run CloudFormation, and so yeah, I don't think I can answer the performance of it. But in terms of cost, I don't think there is much to worry about in both the cases, right? Because one thing, if when you want to talk about cost, there are multiple things that we can talk about. Like for example, when we actually start up a project, right, and create a bunch of services, we are actually going ahead with AWS, let's say, and at some point, if you want to switch your infrastructure and move away from AWS, the cost of that would be too much if you're actually on CloudFront, right? Because it's AWS specific. At least I'm not 100% aware of any super easy migration tool that would get us out of that issue. But if you are on something like Terraform, it would be a bit easier to actually plug out and plug another infrastructure in. So that kind of is cost effective when we actually want to migrate out. But other than that, I can't really think of any other points out of on the top of my head. Anything else to add, Nitya?
No, Nanda, I think that is mostly it. Terraform is cloud agnostic, and you can maintain the state, like the backend of the Terraform can be anything. Even it can be a S3 bucket, to be frank, right? Yeah, but if you go for CloudFormation, it's going to be very specific to a vendor. Yeah. So, but apart from that, performance or cost, it depends actually on your use case.
Also, we have another question: how to test infrastructure as service?
I'm assuming it is the code that we are asking. So for Terraform scripts, actually, there is a tool called TerraTest. So similarly, I mean, since by end of the day it's all code, it is testable. Yeah.
Yeah, that is another upside that we want to emphasize on as well. Like when you keep your entire infrastructure as code, I mean, you can treat it as just as any other code, that it actually becomes testable, reusable, modularized, and everything. Right? So
Yeah, sure. We'll move on. I mean, we'll go to the next part of the section, which is pipeline as code, right? So again, what we wanted to cover as a part of this is now we have an infrastructure, right? Let us see how to deploy a service to that infrastructure. So I'll give it out to Nanda for continuing from here.
just give me a second. Yeah, let me just quickly move pipelines as code. So yeah, the next step, I mean, uh, like from what Nitya has been talking about and we have been talking about so far, is that we are actually emphasizing on keeping your infrastructure as code. When we say your infrastructure, it includes everything, right? Another thing that would actually be part of your like whole setup of your infrastructure is your pipelines, your CI/CD in specific. So what is CI/CD? I mean, it's something that all of you would have already heard about, but still, just to give a one-liner is that, as the name suggests, it's basically a workflow, like a bunch of steps that you actually want your application to go through when you take it to production. And it can be streamlined and put, I mean, the instructions can be put together. And every time you actually push your code to your like version control, it actually go through the same set of instructions as a workflow, and your application will be like delivered. So this is like the entire like very minor gist of the whole CI/CD workflow. So that being said, what is pipeline as code is, as you would have already guessed, like keeping these pipelines. I mean, you can create your pipelines manually, right? Like let's say you're just having your Jenkins CI or something else like GoCD or anything. You can create your entire set of pipelines manually as well. So the problem with that is like when you actually have your entire pipelines as create manually, when there is a problem, let's say when there is something that goes wrong and your like your entire CI goes down, when you want to recreate or when you want to see what changes that were made recently and all those things, right? When you've created manually, you don't actually have a source of truth, or you don't actually have any audits, or you don't have any backups of your this thing. When you want to do disaster recovery, you can't just bring up your pipelines immediately. So you'll go through those problems as well. So when we say pipeline as code, we keep our pipelines as well as configuration files, so that they can also be like they can go through the same benefits of what we have discussed in the infrastructure code things as well. So all you have to do is to write your CI/CD pipelines as code, and your version control will apply it, and you have your pipelines reusable, and you have one single source of truth, and you have your history, audit, and everything as well. So that being said, I have already talked about the why part and what we get out of it. So as we just talked about, right, like when you actually have pipelines as code and part of version control and everything, let's say one of your teammates actually made changes to your pipeline, and at some point if something goes wrong and you actually want to know what is going wrong, you will actually be able to go and look back, because it's just like any other code and you have a history of it. And any changes applied to your pipelines are crucial. So you have audit of what was applied by who and when and everything. So, and at the same time, you can collaborate on it easily. So that comes out obviously. And the last thing is backup. You have your entire configuration or the blueprint of your pipelines as configuration files at your hand right now. And at any point in time, you can just bring these up in minutes at least. So that being said, I'll just quickly get into a quick demo of this whole thing, and for which we'll be using GitHub Actions. So, I mean, when you want to go for CI, right? Just like anything else in the whole DevOps ecosystem, even for CI/CD, we have like multiple things that we can go for. So, like you can go for Jenkins, you can go for GoCD, Travis, Circle CI, or a lot of other tools like even environment specific things like for mobile you have specific CI/CD and all those are there. So one such tools that has been emerging in the last recent time is GitHub Actions. So just to talk about it, I'll just get to this fancy page GitHub has put up itself. The one highest selling point for GitHub Actions, and my opinion is at least it's actually part of GitHub and it's part of your repository, so it's super close to the code, and you can just trigger your. They call it workflows. Your pipelines are called workflows in GitHub Actions, and they can be triggered on any event for that matter. So for example, let's say you have something like depend about checking your vulnerabilities or something, and it raises a pull request. There will be or any pull request that you or your team members raise. So you can just run a workflow of just linting and testing, just to check if the pull request is like building fine. So even on an event like pull request or any other thing, you can just trigger a workflow that you want to trigger, and you can have a number of workflows. So that's pretty much it. And another another nice thing about this is it's of course free for public repositories, and it's to a limited extent it's free for private repositories as well. So I mean, we have been at least using GitHub Actions extensively for microservices, and it has been working fine for us. But one thing that we want to emphasize here again and again is it's the strategies that we actually want to emphasize on, and not the tools, because the tools are so many that you can choose anything you want based on your own use case. But in this demo, we'll just be using GitHub Actions as we just mentioned. So for this, we just have a simple application over here. So this application is called Dobby. Like it's a very simple Go application which will just have your like version, health, and readiness, and all those endpoints that you can just deploy and use it for testing. So we'll be using this simple application to actually show how like this whole pipelines as code work with GitHub Actions at least. One thing to show here before I move on to the code is that like at this point, we have a dev cluster called GeekNet Dev running for us, which we can use for our service deployment. So our pipeline should be able to take our application and deploy it to the cluster. So instead of doing it manually, let's take a look at pipelines as code. Just give me a second. I'll just move this to the desktop. So here we have the Dobby application. I mean, don't worry about the Go part or the application part of things, because it's just a basic REST API application you can think of. What we want to talk about here is actually the actually how we have actually configured our deployment, and how we are actually adding it as part of our pipelines and keeping those pipelines as code. So just like Nithya mentioned, we can't get into the details of things, but at a high level, we are using Terraform to actually apply things to our infrastructure as well. So if you look at this particular Terraform script over here, let me know if it is not too visible and the font size is too low. I'll increase it.
I think you can increase it a bit, Nanda. Maybe get into presenter mode.
Okay, just give me a second. Just forgot where the font is. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I think it's a bit better now on this side. Cool. Sorry about that. Please be patient with me on this. So let's get back. On the left side, you can see a simple Terraform folder, which has a bunch of Terraform scripts, which I'll just go through quickly. So like we have our DigitalOcean cluster running in DigitalOcean. So again, we'll need our DigitalOcean token, and that is pretty much what we'll need to actually talk to our DigitalOcean provider. So all that we are setting up here is actually a Helm provider, which is just offered by Terraform, where you can just deploy your Helm charts to Kubernetes. And we have a very simple, Helm chart of this particular application packed here with a public Docker image. And we are just doing a Helm release over here. So that is pretty much it for our application deployment. Terraform will take care of talking to DigitalOcean and actually doing and picking up the right cluster. And that is being done with this data object. We are just saying with this environment variable, whatever the environment is, pick up that cluster, because we know that as per convention, our cluster will be Geek Night Dev, at least in this case. So we are saying that pick up that cluster and use that cluster for your Kubernetes setup when we set up a Helm provider. And we are just doing a Helm release of that particular Helm chart, which will just deploy this application to our Kubernetes cluster. So with that being said, let me just quickly configure that particular cluster with kubectl. So if I just get the number of pods, there are no resources right now in that particular cluster in the default namespace. So now all I'm gonna do is to, before I get into GitHub actions, I'll just quickly make a change in my region and do a push, because that will trigger the deployment. Just making a comment of it. So this will in turn trigger my deployment and the pipeline, the workflow for deployment. So we'll just get right into it in a minute. For now, all we know is that there is nothing running on the cluster. I'll just run a watch to get pods. So if there is a change in the cluster pods, we'll actually be able to see it. So now let's quickly talk about the pipelines. So here, all we have set up, all we need is a YAML file inside the inside your repository to actually run your pipelines. So here I have pipelines.yaml, and I have a bunch of other things, other pipelines as well. But the main one that is actually going to be deploying our application is this one. So we have a bunch of stages here. Like in every other CI, you'll have your configuration file somewhat similar to this. You'll set up your stages and like do whatever you want in each and every stage. At the end, you'll deploy your application and maybe run your unit tests and all that on top of it. So in this particular pipeline, to quickly run through, we have a linting stage and we are actually testing our application. And in the deploy to dev thing, we are actually checking out our source and configuring Terraform in our runner and actually applying this particular script, which is doing nothing but applying your Terraform script. When we say Terraform apply, as Nitya mentioned, it is just going to take the configuration file and apply the changes into the particular cluster that that we have configured. So let us quickly go back to Chrome and take a look at this whole pipeline in action. So we have an action tab, and like I just put a commit. So for that, there is a service pipeline that is actually triggered and running. So here, as you can see, it actually visualizes the whole bunch of stages for you as well. If you open any of these, you can see that it installed Go for us and ran Mint, and everything seems fine. In the same way, it will run each and every stage, and you can even set up dependencies over here. Like for example, here we have just mentioned that this particular stage test needs lint to be successful, and this actually needs test to be successful so that you run your like stages in a sequential manner based on their dependencies. If you don't specify a dependency, it will run these things parallelly as well, which will speed up the execution of your entire workflow. So let us look at what our deployment stage is doing. Logs are still loading. It ran the whole thing, and as you can see, all it did is to actually initialize this whole thing, and then it says that we are actually doing a Helm release of this particular chart over here and a bunch of other things that we have configured. So this will be deployed to our Kubernetes cluster. So as you can see over here, 34 seconds ago, this entire, it created a deployment, and it is actually having your Dobby pod running. We have set the replicas to be 1, so there's just 1 replica running at this point, and you can actually access your application. Okay. So this is pretty much it for configuration, pipelines as code. So all that we wanted to emphasize on is that you actually have the entire part of code packaging, and from code packaging to actually deployment, you have everything that is part of your pipelines itself, and that pipelines are kept as configurations. So these, so we can achieve the subsets that we have just talked about. So, okay. So this is one thing that we saw. I mean, at this point, we actually will realize that there is a minor problem that we want to address. So what if we want to get another environment like prod? So in that case, one option is to go and actually manually create the whole prod environment with another bunch of variables, like how Nithya just demonstrated to us. But what if we keep our infrastructure code also as part of our pipelines? So to just talk about that quickly, I'll just hand over to Nithya again.
Yeah, so what we would want to show here, right? So if you remember, so we had created our, our infrastructure, the dev infrastructure with these commands. So we initialized, planned, and applied. So if you remember, there was a like a screen recording I did, right? So instead of doing it from my desktop, right? How happy or good it will be if I can automate it, right? So here for the again for the demo purpose, we are using GitHub Actions. So assume a pipeline like this, right? Where on push or pull request, right? I'll just check a bunch of things. I'll make sure my Terraform is formatted, initialized, validated. So once all my linting and formatting, and here, like someone asked, right? If you have tests, right, you can also run them. So once they're all good, right, then I can set up my dev structure, infrastructure. So I have a, like, this is on pull or push or pull request, which can be automated, right? So here I would again, again, the stages are more about you want an Terraform CLI to run, right? So this is mostly that. And after that, I am trying to initialize with my dev backend, and I'm trying to plan and apply, right? So this is automated. Now, like Nanda mentioned, right? Okay, let me actually, I already created the dev cluster, but I still have a commit in local, so I can still push that. Yeah, so if I can show, so if you see here, so I had changed some readme locally, so it will check and setup. Okay, so here I did not mention that dependency. So like Nanda was saying, right, it runs in parallel. But if you want, you can mention the dependency saying after check, I'll have to set up my dev infrastructure. So if you see here, since we already have applied, the plan would be that there is no changes to apply. So there is nothing to change here. But here, even here, right, if I want to make some changes, say I want to create a new node or anything, it is on click, right? It is actually automatic on dev infrastructure. So I just change the size of the node or change the Kubernetes cluster, it will actually recreate the entire cluster, right? Immediately. Now, all I want now is a new environment. So my Dobby is very good, right? I want to deploy to production. So what we have one more, pipeline for that. So this pipeline is automatic. Sorry, it is not automatic. It is manual. We just for the purpose we didn't want to make it automated. So here what we have, right, on click of this workflow, it will actually initialize the production environment. It is just a different backend, and we'll try to plan and apply. So here, so just few more things to call out. We are using Terraform, and we are doing the execution on remote, right? Because if you see, I need a common place to save my state, right? Usually we go for either a S3 bucket or a GCP bucket or anything. So instead, Terraform also offers something called a Terraform Cloud. So as a remote backend. So here all our states are in a remote backend, right? Some place, a common distributed place, so that when it runs via pipeline, right, I will actually check my state and apply it. So here, let us actually see what will happen when I trigger this production pipeline. So in the interest of time, I triggered it before some time. I triggered it before like 8 minutes, 11 minutes. So if you see here, it clearly shows you, first it will do the checkout, it will do some setup, and then it will show you like what exactly is getting applied, right? So it will try to apply this cluster, and it will show you the name of the node, yeah, the node pool and everything. And after I look at the plan, I can go ahead and apply, right? So now if you come back and look at the clusters, right, I have a production cluster. Mind my internet, sorry. Yeah, so I have my production cluster, which I created 20 minutes ago via pipeline, right? So now I have a production cluster. So let's go and deploy Dobby. So for that as well, we have, okay, let it open. So we have a action, a GitHub action to deploy to production, right? If you look at this YAML, all it is trying to do, it is trying to apply this Terraform in a production environment. So let me actually click it. Okay, before I click it, let me show you that there is nothing in the cluster. Okay, so let me watch and let me go and click it. So it's a Helm resource, so I can also do a Helm -. So it's creating a Helm resource. So like one more thing, like I mentioned, so we are using Terraform Cloud. So you can actually also see this run, in the cloud if you really want to. So it will show you that it is trying to plan. Okay. So if you see, it is still pending install. It is still on the way of installing. Yeah. So now coming back to the scripts, yeah, I think mostly we covered that, right? So similarly, we have a script to tear down. Like if you want to delete the deployment, you can do a destroy. So this is to delete the Dobby deployment. So similarly, if I want to delete the entire infrastructure, right, I have a destroy command as well. I mean, mostly we might not need it, but if you want to play around, you can go ahead and do that. Yeah. Yeah, I think the apply is done. So we have the cluster and yeah, the status is deployed. Yeah, I think that is mostly what we had. Yeah, like I mentioned, the tools we used is Terraform with Terraform Cloud as backend and GitHub Action. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Nanda? You're on mute if you're talking.
I was just searching the window. Sorry. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I just saw one question over there though.
Okay.
Are we using GitOps here, and are we committing the image tag in the value stat YAML? So more like two split of questions. So one is, well, to GitOps part, I think from what I understand, GitOps is more of a strategy, and there are multiple solutions available to it, like for a long time now. Like it's just keeping your operations close to Git or close to code. And you would just require some pipeline, like anything like Circle CI, Travis CI, anything to run your workflow. So GitHub Actions is something that is offered by GitHub itself right now. So it's a CI in itself. I think, I'm not sure if it was inspired from the concept of GitOps, but it does pretty much the same. So it is part of GitHub, and it is very close to your code, and it runs workflows on top of your code itself. So that is pretty much about the GitOps part. I'm not sure if it answer your questions as well. Just raise it if you have more on that. Another part is, are we committing image tag in the values.yaml for the chart? Yes. I mean, ideally, we would be doing something over there, right? Like as part of the whole deployment process, the code packaging would also happen there. In the interest of time, like for the build time also, we have actually removed that part alone. So ideally, it could be anything. Like it could be us just pushing, like releasing an image and as part of the pipeline, and actually referring to that in the values.yaml, the particular version or the latest always. Or if not for that, we might even have like a container repository. All the providers offer that these days. Like for example, DigitalOcean has a container repository and added it recently, and AWS has ECR. So every provider has one of those container repository options as well. So we'll be pushing our image over there, and like from that we can directly bring in and deploy those images, whichever provider we are in. So that is one option, which is actually not done as part of this demo. As of now, in this, there is a public image that we are using of Dobby in the values.yaml as part of the chat.
Yeah, just adding on, like Nanda mentioned, right, in the interest of time, we did not package the Helm chart, but if you see, again, whatever we are showcasing here is a mirrored version of the actual Dobby. So the actual source code of the Dobby, right, the original one is here. And if you see, right, we have a Go releaser, which will actually publish the images. So ideally what we wanted to do is extend this, and also package the Helm chart if possible. So that the Helm chart is also available. That another way is you can, like you push a Docker image, you can also push a Helm chart to a chart museum or something. But again, it's all a public repository, right? So instead of pushing it somewhere, we thought of giving it as a zipped tar file. So here, in the interest of like time and the purpose of demo, we actually checked in the tar file. But there was one more question of committing the image tag. Yes, for the demo purpose, we have hard coded few things, but that is not how you can do it, right? Like there are different good ways to do it. Yeah, I think most of that Nanda mentioned already, but you can automate all this. Like if the question is more about can I automate? Yes, I can automate.
Like also we have one other question in chat. Hope we did not answer it. with respect to Jenkins, this pipeline as code will be written in simple Jenkins file. Correct me, guys.
Yeah. Yes. We'll have a Jenkins file, and we'll be able to automate the stages and jobs there. And you can also actually write some Groovy code if needed. So Jenkins supports Groovy. If you
Yeah.
want, you can have libraries, refer it in your Jenkins file. Jenkins has very rich plugins also, so you can do a lot of things there.
Exactly. With Jenkins is. So
So like I have a like, simple question. So
Mhm.
let's say let's say like I have a cron job. Like
Mhm.
I'm adding a cron job, a very simple cron job. Is there a way to write a test or like let me know if that cron job has been deleted? So like I'm adding a cron job with some set of properties to be executed by the cron job. Accidentally, like due to some other changes by my teammate, it get deleted.
Mhm.
So I might not know it, right? If it's a pod, we'll be trying to access it. I'll get an error. So it's a cron job, right? We'll be thinking, okay, it will be running periodically on the given time. But if there's something I'm going to check, that time I'll be able to know, okay, where is my cron job? It's not there. So is there any way where like if the pod is not there, I should be notified or it should break somewhere? In pipeline, right? If there's a miss, we'll get a red pipeline. Is there any way or like something similar to the test
yeah, like
where we can bring in a safety net?
yeah. One thing is that when you actually keep infrastructure as code, like for example, Terraform itself, like if you have defined the resource with something like Terraform, and if by chance that particular resource was deleted manually, let's say, and it would conflict with your state, and when you are actually running each and every pipeline, it would go red. Okay, that is one thing. I have not extensively used TerraTest. I don't know if Nitya can add in. But if you have some safety net around whichever infrastructure export tool which you're using, if something is missing from the configuration itself, and like that, I mean, the test would of course check what you expected to have, the blueprint of it, and what is actually there, right? So with that itself, it would actually fail as a first step. So those are some places we usually find out that there is some mismatch in the configuration of our infrastructure components and like the actual infra that is actually live. So, I mean, Nitya, anything else you want to add into that?
Um, no, just one thing I felt, right. Like, I mean, I would still feel like if you have everything as code, don't manually interfere with it.
Yeah, that is
So like it's not manual thing. Let's say like
Mhm.
some code configurations, it's been changed. Not like manually going deleting a cron
Mhm.
job. Maybe like let's say like
So
I
if
have a
yeah.
restart policy.
Mhm.
Instead of like on failure, I change it to never. Let's say for some
Mm-mm.
weird reason, luckily my cron job failed and
Okay.
it's not restarting at all. So it won't be
So
available, right?
yeah, so if it is via code, right, you can write test. So that is
Uh,
how it is. So for
that is
Helm, if you use Helm, for example, you have Helm tests. So I having I don't know if there's test for customize or something like that, but Helm has tests. Similarly, Terraform also has tests. So when you try to actually Terra test will try to apply and check for values. So Helm test I haven't used excessively, but you can test for these hooks whether they are installed not installed. So that way it is possible.
okay.
Again, if it is everything is via infrastructure, it is testable. If you do something manually, it's going to be difficult because then there will be a difference between your state and what is actually there. So it might be a issue.
yeah.
But
So
if
this
everything is going to be via state, it's okay.
okay. So this test happens like before deployment or after deployment. Like, just to be aware of like where does this test come in picture?
When it's Terra test, it's before deployment, of course. Like it would actually run the test first, just like any other code before we actually go ahead and deploy.
Okay.
When it comes to failure in terms of manual changes, like sometimes actually people go ahead and like make a simple policy change just to fix that situation, and then they don't actually update the infrastructure configuration. In that case, it will actually fail while deploying itself, saying
Okay.
that you know what you have a conflict in actual infra and your configuration. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the way it is.
Got it.
Cool.
I think like, we have like one more question.
Okay, there.
Yeah, I think again, like I don't know if that question was specifically handling Kranza, but just one thing around replica, right? So I mean, it might be going to a little specific to Kubernetes, but anyway, so I'll try to keep it very simple. So in Kubernetes, we have a deployment, we have like replica. So the responsibility of the replica set and deployment is to make sure the pod is up and running. So if a pod goes down, it will actually make sure that it comes back up because of the reconciliation group and everything. But if someone if the cron job is getting deleted, for example, then it is something that you are doing. So those things, it is not like it's different, right? Like the responsibility is different. So if someone did something and accidentally deletes a cron job as a part of your infrastructure code, then that has to be tested differently. So this will not solve the problem.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, folks. If there are any questions, please raise it.
Like we have Vikyan sharing something in the group.
Yeah, conf test is also another thing.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that is all we have.
Cool then. Thank you so much, folks, for joining. Thank you, Monica.
Thanks, Nandagopal and Nithya, for joining us. Thank you so much. So I think that is all. So thanks everyone for attending today's Geek Night, and we expect your presence in upcoming events as well. So thank you so much. And one thing, so please feel free to fill up the feedback form for second session as well. So it will be really helpful. Thank you again.
Kindly give us the feedback. Yeah, it will be useful for us to correct ourselves.
Improve.
Or do something if it is good.
That's like you want some more extra topics or extra content, or the way like Nanda want to present the content to you, please feel to give to us.
It could be anything for that matter. Just add in feedback and it would be really valuable to us. Thank you so
Any
much.
area of improvement will be really helpful.
Even the improvements on the GIFs that we use.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, folks. Bye.